Now, my mama's always telling me how miracles happen every day. Some people don't think so, but they do.
Hi, welcome to Bomb Squad Matinee, a show that we will, God willing, hopefully be uploading more regularly. I am your host and master of ceremony, Tanner Richard Kraft, and with me I
am Austin Zwiebelman.
And today we are discussing what was once my favorite movie of all time. That's right, Austin's sex tape. So the crazy thing about this, the cat jumped up at the same time. The cat was just as shocked.
He's supposed to be protecting that information.
He's like, oh shit, he ratted me out. No, we're talking about Forrest Gump. And Forrest Gump, to me, is one of the most uniquely American movies. Of course, a lot of the classics that we consider film canon are American movies because we live in America and we live in a very heliocentric world. But I think the culture of the movie, the iconography of the movie is very uniquely American. And I just kind of wanted to discuss that before we get into the movie overall. What's our favorite, like, American movie, Austin? What say you?
This is kind of a trash answer, but I'm almost obligated to say Citizen Kane. I always think about how the initial working draft of that movie was titled American. My theater teacher always said it was The American, but I checked today, I think it was just titled American. Orson Welles really thought he had the essence of our country distilled in that movie. The story of a man who learns money can buy you anything you could ever dream of, except the genuine love of other people. But my real answer is Malcolm X by Spike Lee. Get fucked, liberals. Back to you, Tanner.
My answer is Easy Rider. I'm kidding.
Not bad. I respect it.
No. That is kind of a real answer. Difficult question. I think there are a lot of movies that could fit. A lot of them are city movies, like Nashville, I think is a very American movie. Paris, Texas, I think is a very American movie.
Yeah.
Actually, before I go to my butt, Bonnie and Clyde is a very American movie. But my answer, I think, is actually also gonna be a Spike Lee movie. It recently celebrated, I believe, its 35th anniversary, and that's his seminal 1989 classic, Do the Right Thing. I still think it is the quintessential movie of capturing race relations, specifically in America. It has aged so incredibly well, which is depressing.
A little bit.
It's an incredible film, I think, and I think it is very representative of that type of Americana. We both picked kind of depressing-ish movies for our most American movie, but Forrest Gump, I wouldn't say is a depressing movie. And we're just gonna get right into it, because I'm sure we're both gonna have a lot to say about according to IMDb anyway, the 11th greatest movie ever made.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, it's 11th on IMDb. So let's just get right into it. Austin, what are your overall thoughts on Forrest Gump?
All right. Now watch this drive. Tanner, you've always said you had kind of a special relationship with this movie. Would you say that you do?
Yeah, 100% yes.
Like you, Tanner, I also have a special relationship with Forrest Gump. It was always on TV when I was growing up. It's a movie my parents really loved, and I'm sure my parents would have been stoked to go to its premiere on July 6th, 1994, but they were already kind of busy having a baby boy that day. I was born the day this movie came out. Anyway.
Are you about to turn 30?
Yeah.
Holy shit, sorry, that just occurred to me.
Yeah, baby, I dropped when Forrest Gump did. Not as cool as, like, Jay-Z's The Blueprint, but, you know, it's not a bad thing to be,
well, a lot of things dropped the same day Jay-Z's The Blueprint came out.
As I've, like, grown up, Forrest Gump kind of shape shifts into, like, different films. When I was younger, this was one of those fairly unchallenged cultural touchstones like The Shawshank Redemption and The Godfather. When I was 19, though, that Family Guy joke about, like, Jenny being really shitty to Forrest dropped and kind of set the tone for the more negative takes going forward. Do you know the bit, Tanner?
I have not seen this particular Family Guy bit, but I am aware of the general cultural thing around Jenny.
Jamie, play the clip.
Hi, Forrest. I know you just got back from Vietnam and you love me, but I'm gonna go run a train with this group of Black Panthers I just met.
Okay, Jenny.
Not too long ago, I sat down to watch the 25th anniversary 4K release with my husband, and he's mostly in the camp of people who think it's fucking crazy that we used to have non-disabled actors playing mentally disabled characters. Man thought this was basically a more prestigious version of I Am Sam, like a gourmet version of Radio with Cuba Gooding Jr. But for me, now that me and the movie are both turning 30, Forrest Gump really does feel like that idiom about half a glass of water. If you offer this movie a charitable reading, it's got a weird sort of internal logic that makes the whole thing really moving emotionally. But if you go in looking to rip it apart, it's a particularly insidious-seeming, anti-intellectual film cloaked in, like, seductive Oscar bait trappings. Both tunnels extend much further than you would expect. It's kind of incredible a film can be simultaneously this great and horrible, depending on your perspective going in. A less original note about how Forrest Gump is bad, a critique that has existed since the Family Guy bit dropped in the episode Quagmire's Quagmire, is that this movie is undoubtedly the most high-profile example of a misogynistic trope where women suddenly want to settle down with nice guys who have loved them for decades, but only after they've fucked a bunch of other dudes and, like, are suddenly a single mother. You will see shitty manosphere comics about this trope in particularly dumb corners of Facebook. To everybody who whips out this critique and thinks they're suddenly like a brain genius Sigma male, I want you to ask yourself this. If you were Jenny, would you really want to date the socially stunted boy from your hometown whose house is right down the street from the place where you got molested as a kid? The conservative guy who shows up randomly once every 5 years who can't stop punching people in the face? If you seriously think about Jenny's point of view for like 10 seconds, it starts to make more sense. But even that doesn't change the fact that this movie relentlessly punishes Jenny for being a nonconformist, as an especially, like, fucked up counterpoint to Forrest being rewarded with, like, fame and riches because he played football and joined the army and started his own business. You know, the most, like, well-beaten path in the history of mid-20th century white America. To go back to that thing I said about charitable reads, though, because everything I just said is kind of the popular way people talk about Forrest Gump these days. I came across a comment on the movies subreddit that actually made me start crying in bed. And I'm gonna read it here and abbreviate it a little. Jenny is actually not the villain of the story. She could not be with Forrest because a part of her went up to heaven when she was young, when she asked God to make her a bird so she could fly away. God answered her prayer. Forrest and Jenny couldn't be together because her love was in heaven. Her arc is seeking to recombine those two halves. Her story is bookmarked by these attempts to fly on the bridge and outside the bar in the hotel room. Consider the scene where Forrest asks her to marry him. She doesn't say no. She says, "You don't want to marry me." She responds by looking off to the sky. Forrest says that line, "I may not be smart, but I know what love is." Then he goes out and looks at the sky. He knew. And for the record, that beautiful comment is courtesy of the Reddit user Paulie K. Nuts. If you successfully view this film through the sheltered lens of the average, like, heterosexual, mostly Christian that existed in the 90s, Forrest Gump does some really excellent things. It lets you reminisce on big events like Elvis, the Vietnam War, civil rights, John Lennon, and all the presidents we've been through, with the political qualities of those events sanded off. As if those things were fads that happened for no particular reason at all. It's Billy Joel's We Didn't Start the Fire, the motion picture. Forrest Gump succeeds for certain people because it dumbs down everything and directs all its energy towards playing the fucking hits. A Vietnam vet quadriplegic overcoming his depression and finding God. A dead black soldier's family striking it rich and employing a white maid. A hippie girl who settles down and starts a family with her childhood best friend. And at the center of it all, a simple man who goes on to accomplish great things. Possibly the greatest dad movie of all time. But holy shit, does it actively get harder to watch the more you learn about American history. And for me, all the shit I have just said is kind of overshadowed by what a huge filmmaking achievement Forrest Gump was. ILM had just recently switched from optical effects to digital effects, and some of the set extensions and the composite shots in here are fucking legendary, considering they were made on these, like, 1990s Macintosh computers that would halt and catch fire if you tried to run Minecraft on them. Robert Zemeckis really was, like, neck and neck with James Cameron on visual effects back when he was younger, before, like, the brainworms set in and fucked up his catalog.
Motion capture.
Fuck you, Tanner. And this would not be an honest review of Forrest Gump if I did not pay lip service to Tom Hanks, the actor whose performance single-handedly made this like a legendary hit. If anyone else tried to play the accidental millionaire from Greenbow, Alabama, Forrest Gump would probably just be one of those morbid curiosities of yesteryear, like Tiptoes with Gary Oldman.
Oh my God.
Right? To finally wrap it up, this film is both a wolf in sheep's clothing and a source of profound joy, depending on who you are as a person. This movie gave us the phrase, "life is like a box of chocolates," and it also used footage from Birth of a Nation for a visual gag. It's a technical marvel that took CGI to new heights, and also gave uneducated people the impression that the US invaded Vietnam because we wanted to fight bad guys or something. In the end, though, one thing is certain. The real Forrest Gump is the friends we made along the way. Back to you, Tanner.
I really agree with a lot of what you're saying in terms of the positive side. I'm gonna have a whole rant about the Jenny stuff later. But I'm just gonna get right into my thoughts on the movie overall, which is this was my favorite movie of all time. It is still my second favorite movie ever made, to Everything Everywhere All at Once. And I think there's a lot of fair questions why. I want to start off right off the bat as a man with autism. I think a lot of people are unfair about the type of actors that can play characters of roles with disabilities. Obviously, I don't necessarily have an intellectual disability, so this is not necessarily my area of expertise, but I do think there is nothing wrong with actors playing those type of people. Honestly, I don't think you should do that thing that happens with actors is cis men playing trans women or vice versa. That's kind of the only thing I think not okay. Because it sort of perpetuates the whole man in a dress thing with trans women. That's the only thing I really think is okay. Yeah. I think it's fine for straight actors to play gay people. I think it's fine for gay people to play straight people. I think it's fine for someone without an intellectual disability to play someone with an intellectual disability. I think that's fine. And getting that out of the way now. For me, I was 14 years old when I saw this movie for the first time. It was the August before my freshman year of high school. And this to me was sort of an introduction to like adult movies in a way. I had seen a couple of movies that were more aimed for adults. Most famously, I remember begging my mom to pay for Anonymous on pay-per-view, which is the fucking Roland Emmerich Shakespeare Didn't Write His Plays movie. I watched that when I was like 12. It's not good. It's a bad movie. It's a bad movie. Just putting that out there, guys. Roland Emmerich's Anonymous, bad.
Hot take.
They are launching fireworks outside. For reference, audience, we were recording this on the 3rd of July, the night before the 4th of July. And because we live in the Midwest, people have been launching fireworks for the past 3 days.
Yeah. R.I.P. my neighbor's dog.
allegedly illegal in all these counties. It's supposed to be illegal, and yet I'm going on a rant. Where do I begin with Forrest Gump? When you watch it at 14, I think that's like the correct age to watch it in.
Yes.
Because you have a baseline understanding of all the historical events that are happening without a deeper perspective maybe in why its depiction of said events is a little lackluster. And I all the critiques about the smoothing over of the historical events I think is largely correct. I also think it's a bit uncharitable because I imagine when Zemeckis made this in 1994, he imagined the audience would have the deeper understanding of those events and he wouldn't need to fucking explain it to the audience because a lot of them would have been adults who had largely lived through these events.
That's a really good point.
And I think that's a lot of why it gets smoothed over. But for me, the fundamental thing about Forrest Gump is if I were to compare it to any sort of like storytelling genre, I would compare it most to a fairy tale. I have for a few years now been saying that Forrest Gump is a fairy tale of Americana. And I think that's a pretty accurate depiction with all of the facets of history that Forrest happens to live through and influence, and the sort of good old American boy image of Forrest Gump, which represents one half of America, especially in these eras, pretty perfectly. And then on the other hand, you have Jenny, the non-conformist half of America, and where these two halves meet in the middle. In terms of romance, in terms of how they explore these different facets of history, etc., etc. That, to me, is the brilliance of Forrest Gump at its core. It's a fairy tale of Americana, and it's carried by, quite frankly, two absolute powerhouse performances by Tom Hanks and Robin Wright. Let's get this out of the way. It is a goddamn travesty that Robin Wright not only didn't win the Oscar for either Best Leading Actress or Best Supporting Actress that year, it's a travesty that she wasn't even nominated for this movie. She was nominated for a Saturn Award for this movie, which is funny because I don't understand what's very sci-fi about Forrest Gump. But she was not even nominated for an Oscar. Gary Sinise was. Tom
I can see that.
Hanks was. And obviously this movie famously won Best Picture. To the chagrin of many people.
What was its big competition that year?
Pulp Fiction. Shawshank Redemption.
Oh!
I maintain that Forrest Gump is the right pick, though. It is easily my favorite movie of those three, and I love those other two movies.
Yeah.
Robin Wright and Tom Hanks are incredible in this, and Tom Hanks I specifically identified with as a kid because of what I just said. I have autism. I have always longed to find characters with intellectual or mental disabilities on the screen that I could somewhat project myself into, and Tom Hanks is sort of the quintessential disabled character.
Yeah.
I think when you think of a disabled character in a movie, you will think, if you think of a character of a physical disability, you're going to think of Lieutenant Dan. And if you think of a character with a mental disability, you're going to think of Forrest Gump.
Yeah, that's fair. That's true.
And I think his performance is perfect. Because here's the thing, he has an intellectual disability, but Forrest Gump is not dumb. He is not dumb. He often throughout the movie shows him having excellent street smarts, good instincts, and stuff. He often shows himself to be fairly, like, resourceful, if he's not necessarily smart. The movie sort of portrays it in a joking way, but if you analyze it perfectly at its surface, Forrest Gump is not an idiot. Is he a bit slow? Sure. He's just not book smart. I've always interpreted Forrest that way anyway. And it's really meaningful to see him basically live this ultimate life of success and live a very meaningful life, regardless of his disability. And in contrast, Jenny, who again, I'm going to have a whole rant on later, but I'm going to save that for general discussion, lives a very tragic life. And it's very depressing. Like, Forrest gets to experience all the crazy cool shit that happened for Americans, while Jenny gets the bad shit. Ending with her either having AIDS or what I personally think, hepatitis.
The virus. In air quotes.
Yeah, the virus. It's something that was sexually transmitted. I think her symptoms line up more with hepatitis B, C. But more people think she has AIDS. Regardless, she has a disease of some kind. And when she finally sees Forrest again, she's like, hey, this is your son, Forrest Gump Jr. And this is the first thing I always point to when I say Forrest isn't dumb. Because the first fucking thing Forrest asks, and it's such a tragically sad question, is when he finds out he has a son, he immediately goes to ask, is he like me?
Yeah.
As someone who wants to one day be a father, I often grapple with the fact that there's a very real chance I could pass autism on to my children. And this is a silly little movie podcast, so I'm not going to get into that. I'll let that question fill the air, and I won't ruin the vibes by getting too in detail with it. The special effects of Forrest Gump are obviously off the chart incredible, have mostly aged pretty well, except for when any president starts talking.
My God.
It's straight up like fucking like a puppet, like that's straight up how they talk. It's fucking hilarious. Mm-hmm. But then you got shit like John F. Kennedy being like, I believe this boy has to piss.
Yep, just putting that fake mouth on top of that footage.
And then it's the funniest president interaction though was when LBJ tells him when he puts his pants down, and LBJ's like, nice.
It walks off and says, "God damn," but his lips don't move like this is Madam Web or something.
The spider.
But behind the scenes of that is funny because for the wide shots, instead of they like just rotoed out the head of Johnson and put him on the body of an actor in a reenactment that they filmed, and it's funny seeing the effects plate of just Lyndon Johnson's head floating around. It's neat.
It's like Tony Stark in Civil War.
Yeah, it's exactly like that. God, ILM did a good job. This couldn't have happened without Star Wars.
They did a fantastic job. I think the screenplay is exceptional. I think Eric Roth did a great job with the screenplay. Robert Zemeckis was once one of the greatest living directors on the planet. Yeah. I don't know why the brainworms got him. Maybe it was the same brainworms that got Robert Kennedy Jr. Because Robert Zemeckis seems incapable of making proper movies now.
Spielberg for a long time too, until he just started dropping banger after banger again.
Yeah, but even Spielberg's brainworms movies were usually pretty fun.
Yeah, he didn't make Pinocchio or whatever the fuck Robert Zemeckis.
Yeah, like what's the worst thing Spielberg made in his brainworms era? Munich? Like
Munich's good.
Munich's good.
Has anyone seen the BFG? Did that turn out okay?
I saw the BFG in theaters because I was a massive fan of the book as a kid, and I really liked it.
Okay. It just looked kind of trash.
I'm that actor's biggest fan, though. Mark Rylance, I'm his like #1 fan. I'm a Rylance head through and through.
Okay, glad to hear it.
Clearly I'm running out of steam here, so we're gonna move on to general discussion after a brief commercial break. Welcome back from the ad break. You see that thing right there? That's a movie palette. These little strips of color, maybe some of your favorite movies, almost certainly one of Forrest Gump. You can go to moviepalette.com and order your own and enter the code SQUAD15 at checkout to save 15% on your order. Okay, so the thing with Jenny in this movie is that for 20 years, 30 years now, I guess, the critiques of Jenny of this movie has been largely a load of anti-intellectual, gross, misogynistic bullshit. I think a very crucial part of Jenny as a character that you find out in the first 15 minutes of the movie. And I'm going to be blunt here. Trigger warning, sexual assault. Jenny's father rapes her. Implied to be multiple times. She was taken advantage of when she was too young to really know what was going on, to know any better. She grows up to be an adult, and her childhood best friend happens to have a goddamn intellectual disability. Is it a wonder why she would be terrified of taking advantage of Forrest, which is what she keeps telling herself she's doing? Not to mention, Forrest is such a pure good person. Jenny forever thinks she's damaged goods, as many rape victims tend to believe, unfortunately, that they are forever damaged goods, unworthy of the love that people can give them. Saying that Jenny just takes advantage of Forrest and then dumps a child on him that might not even be his is just misogynistic incel bullshit. It's fucking bullshit. And there's also, of course, that stuff with the Reddit comment about how part of her is in heaven. If Forrest is the heart of Forrest Gump, Jenny is the soul of it. Forrest doesn't have anything to live for if he doesn't have Jenny. Everything he does is so he can see Jenny again someday. It's all about Jenny for him. And it's such a gross misreading of her character, an intentionally misogynistic reading of her character, to insist that she has taken advantage of Forrest when her entire character revolves around the fact that she keeps convincing herself she is. It's pure misogynistic bullshit. And I'm not surprised that a show like Family Guy would rely on such a cheap joke. Side note, I like a lot of Family Guy, and I like a lot of Seth MacFarlane. The TED TV show is fucking hilarious. Family Guy has kind of been a weak show for 15 years at this point, though.
It is a reductive joke that doesn't engage with shit that's directly in the text.
It's anti-intellectual. Forget misogynistic. It's media illiterate.
Yeah. It's also, I guess, doesn't take into mind the complexities of life, just shit that happens when that kind of thing goes down. It's not illegal for Forrest to go and try to find another person, too. He does not own Jenny. At any given point, he could go and
exactly
try to find anybody else after, the various times these fail. Like, it implies Forrest has some vague sense of ownership that, his life cannot start until Jenny's finally, his romantic partner. He could go do anything else. He could go find a
lot of stuff.
Girl. Yeah.
He lived a very full life.
I think
and then at the end, he got to be married to the woman he loved.
I think these people get the impression that this all went to shit and was worthless in the end, mostly just because he didn't get her when she was exactly 18 or something. He didn't get her until she was they didn't get married till she was in her mid 30s or whatever.
She was ran through.
Yeah, it's just fucking trash.
It's misogynistic. I keep emphasizing that word because that is largely what that bullshit critique is. It's misogyny. It is anti-intellectual misogyny. That's my Jenny rant. I hope it lived up to your expectations. It just makes me very angry.
Yeah, it does feel like one of those, that Onion article where it's guy at a party says John Lennon beat his wife. He's kind of weirdly gleeful to bring it up.
Yeah, it's a weird thing where it's it's not that you care that a woman was battered. You care about being getting a one-up on somebody because they fucking like the Beatles.
Yeah, it's just a thing where you flip the movie on its head, but it doesn't necessarily have intellectual coherency there. So it's dumb. I don't know. I'm trying to think of other examples that people do this for fucking movies. It's that thing where it's oh, Ed, Edd and Eddy takes place in the afterlife, actually. It's on that level of dumb bullshit.
It's always, it's a coma. It's the afterlife. Shut the fuck up. Ash Ketchum died in episode 1 of the cartoon. What are you talking about, man?
It's that TikTok about, we found out why growing up means why Peter Parker took off his mask for Cancer Girl. It's not very serious film analysis. What is it? I meant to ask, did this movie do more harm than good politically as a political object?
I don't fucking know.
Right. Okay, so one thing I wanted to point out, and this mostly has to do with like the way specifically my life played out. One of the really suspicious things in here, the Vietnam War one, the Vietnam War element of Forrest Gump particularly sticks out in my mind, because that actually got my ass later in life. Like, I took high school civics. I saw Apocalypse Now, Goodnight Saigon is one of my favorite songs. I'm not afraid to admit that, weird as that is. But I didn't learn the actual fucking reason we invaded Vietnam until I was a full-grown adult. It took me until I was in my 20s for someone to tell me that we invaded that country because the people who kicked out the French were widely popular communists. Our whole precedent for kicking shit off over there was based on a supposed second naval attack during the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which we found out later was a flat-out lie that was made up by the NSA of all people. I don't know if it's different for kids these days, but I feel like the powers that be deliberately kind of obscured the nature of the Vietnam War so that future generations wouldn't get, like, immediately pissed off. And Forrest Gump is so fucked about the Vietnam War specifically. He enlists on a whim, no mention of being coerced by the draft or any other, stuff like that. No mention of why we were there. And when he's supposed to tell the world about how he feels, the movie's just like, LOL, LMAO, nope. I found out while researching this movie that the mic getting cut, dig this, was Robert Zemeckis' idea. Cause the fucking screenwriter, he could not decide between having Forrest say some funny shit or say some dramatic shit, but goddamn does it bolster the claims that this movie is kind of an anti-intellectual farce about politics specifically. A weird subnote though, when the screenwriter was thinking of doing a funny Vietnam speech, he actually, had Billy Crystal over. He had Billy Crystal over to his house and was like, yo, help me write a funny speech about Vietnam for Forrest Gump. That's a real thing that happened.
According to Tom Hanks, would you like to know what he apparently did say at that speech?
Yeah, I read this on the internet a long time ago, but I can't remember it.
Tom Hanks, apparently, according to him, he said, sometimes when people go to Vietnam, they go home to their mamas without any legs. Sometimes they don't go home at all. That's a bad thing. That's all I have to say about that. That's what Tom Hanks claims he says. I gotta be honest, that seems too short for how long he talked.
Yeah, we gotta go. There's like a guy, you know that meme with the snipers? The guy in the back is just people who can read lips. Like, just us bickering about, what did he say? And then the one dude who can read lips is like, what do you mean the mic got cut off?
I heard everything.
He's just talking about just like, Brano,
I understand
it's what
that.
plants crave.
I believe that it's very likely that Zemeckis would have just assumed audiences would get the gist because they lived through Vietnam. Most of them did. Let's say you're in your 30s when you see Forrest Gump. You were a kid when Vietnam was happening. If you're in your 40s, you might have served in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it wasn't until 9/11 that the jingoism machine started working again, because I don't remember if I ran into anybody who was like super down with the Gulf War growing up. It wasn't until those towers fell that everybody was like, you know what, we should invade other countries, fuck it.
By all accounts, the Gulf War was just kind of it's a thing that's happening, I guess.
Right.
It's the 90s, Friends is on.
And the economy is amazing. One kind of lighter thing to note about the war stuff in Forrest Gump is that they use this guy. His name is Captain Dale Dye, D-Y-E, as their military advisor on this picture. This is the dude who helped make Band of Brothers and The Pacific feel authentic. They just roped this dude in on the set and they're like, are we doing war correctly, Dale? He was born in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Missouri, motherfuckers, represent!
We got one!
I got
We got one!
Yeah, what is it? I learned something kind of funny researching The Life is Like a Box of Chocolates line. Do you know the funny way that relates to the book?
No, how does it relate to the book?
Okay. little framing story. This is very short. So Winston Groom, the dude who wrote the book Forrest Gump, which is vastly different than the movie, right, Tanner? It's a different book.
Yeah, the book is bad.
It's got an orangutan character who hangs out with Forrest the whole time. This is an orangutan, like the new Planet of the Apes movie. So Winston Groom will have book signings where people come and they're like, oh, please, Mr. Groom, sign my copy of your book. But then they'll ask him for something extra. They'll be like, and right here, can you write life is like a box of chocolates inside the front cover? And this is dumb as fuck and makes him feel bad because the actual first line of the book is, let me say this, being an idiot is no box of chocolates. The screenwriter Eric Roth is the one who came up with the line from the movie about how life is like a box of chocolates. Can you fucking imagine that happening to you? Famous movie comes out about your book, and the most famous line from it is like the first line from your book, flipped on its fucking head, unrecognizable, completely different thing. And everyone's just following you around like, hey, life's like a box of chocolates, right? That fucking sucks.
That's kind of really funny.
Right? Right? Fucking silly. So you know them, like that shot of Forrest Gump on the bench, right? With the Forrest Gump bench shot.
Yeah, the very famous shot.
He's telling strangers his life story. This is unhinged filmmaking, Tanner. Robert Zemeckis thought, wouldn't it be so cool if we filmed Tom Hanks doing all of his narration while actually on site at the bench?
That's a nightmare.
For people who
Is that what they actually did?
That's what they actually did. So for people who don't know how movies are made, you usually record narration in a fucking sound booth somewhere near the studio. You use fancy ribbon microphones, control the qualities of the audio and the background noise, all that good shit. But on Forrest Gump, this motherfucker, Robert Zemeckis, wanted that little extra spice, that feeling Tom Hanks was actually talking to somebody, and probably made his ass sit on that bench telling a story for hours. That's fucking nuts.
You just can't be doing that. You just can't be doing that.
They should have taken his card away.
They should have killed him
They should have killed
before
him.
he could make Beowulf.
Oh man, remember that naked fight in Beowulf where the dude's like, I gotta be naked fight?
No, that was the Northmen, Austin.
No, that was Eastern Promises, Tanner.
No, that was the Passion of the Christ.
Jesus fuck.
Jesus did fuck your mom. We're on a roll, guys.
That ping pong scene where Forrest is squaring off against the Chinese athlete.
He never blinks. Tom Hanks never blinks in the ping pong scenes. Once Forrest is told to keep his eye on a ball, Tom Hanks never blinks in a shot.
Him and Henry
playing
Rollins
ping pong.
like had a meetup. And he's like, Henry Rollins, what can you teach me about ping pong? And he's just like, never blink. You'll fuck him up if you never blink. Okay, so about the ping pong thing, for starters, they got an actual ping pong champion to be the guy across from Tom Hanks. According to IMDb, he goes by Valentine or Valentino, but I wasn't able to get much other information on this guy. This is funny as fuck because Tom Hanks and Valentine were not playing any ping pong during the filming of this shot. They were miming the motions like they were playing the Wii or something. Apparently, Valentine had a really hard time trying to pretend to play the game because his brain is like hardwired to play actual ping pong. One tricky VFX thing about filming the game is Tom Hanks and Valentine could not, under any circumstances, swing the paddles at the same time, otherwise the illusion was fucked, and everything would break. So, production brought a two-tone metronome to set. Basically, Valentine would swing on the high notes, Tom Hanks would swing on the low notes, and the metronome would just gradually speed up in order to make the match look more intense. That's how they did that, like, production-wise. I thought that was neat.
I didn't know that about the metronome. That's cool. I knew that the pole was CGI. I did not know that about the metronome. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's cool how they pulled that off. The ILM guys, it's like fun when it's something pragmatic we can relate to and not just like, oh yes, they made breakthroughs in how the algorithms process the optical flow of the shot. Like, you know, fucking It's fun when it's relatable.
My favorite production thing about this movie is how much the studio clearly did not want Robert Zemeckis to make this movie.
Did they? Were they
Well, they kept
opposed?
fighting him on shit. They tried to cut out... Here's the fucking shit they tried to cut out, right? They tried to cut out the scenes they thought were unnecessarily, like everything with the shrimp boat and everything with Vietnam. So essentially, the entirety of Lieutenant Dan, when Lieutenant Dan is like, arguably, if it wasn't for the fact this movie about Forrest Gump is called Forrest Gump, Lieutenant Dan might have been the more popular character from this movie. And they wanted them to cut the running scenes.
What?
And get this, Zemeckis agreed to do that and then just filmed it anyway without telling them.
Yeah, get fucked, Paramount. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah. Like, that's half the fucking movie they wanted to cut out. What?
I cannot imagine a 90-minute Forrest Gump. You could say a lot of things about this movie, but no one's allowed to say the pacing is bad. This movie goes by real quick. Real fucking quick.
Yeah. Also, if you want to talk about great effects, Gary Sinise having his legs missing is still a seamless effect to this day. I remember watching a 6 Minutes interview all those years later and being like, holy shit, he has legs.
They didn't actually cut it off for the movie. Unions must be getting better.
Yeah, like, especially because there's this thing that they famously did where they told Gary Sinise to swing his legs and then would intentionally put like tables and shit in the way, things that he would have hit if his legs were there. They would like digitally put tables and shit in post to help sell the effect, and it's brilliant.
There's a scene where he like swings over a wall with his stump legs and jumps into the water, and they cut a hole in the wall in real life so he could swing his very real legs, you know, through the hole in the wall, and then they painted out the hole. So it looks like his just legs magically, you know, like don't have legs. It fucking owns!
It's magic.
I wanted to talk about, because you were talking about Paramount trying to cut things, I wanted to talk about some scenes that got deleted by the production that I think are fucking wild.
Oh, please tell me.
There are some crazy deleted scenes in this motherfucker. I'm going to let you know what they are in ascending order from least wild to the wildest. In the least wild corner, production assistants found archival footage of George H.W. Bush playing ping pong while he was ambassador to China. Whoever he was playing against hit the ping pong ball straight into his dick. ILM got kind of far working on the shot with Forrest just absolutely beating H.W.'s Johnson before it got cut from the film. In the mid-level range, we've got this. The scene that was supposed to introduce us to grown-up Forrest was him stumbling upon Martin Luther King Jr. marching through Alabama. The cops were supposed to show up there with vicious German Shepherd attack dogs. Unlucky for the bacon, though, Forrest Gump was there. He proceeded to distract the police dogs by throwing sticks and thus playing fetch with the dogs.
I've seen the footage they shot for, like, I've seen the behind the scenes footage. Holy shit. What were they thinking? You're saying there's something crazier than that.
Yep. Then we have our absolute buck wildest deleted scene. They filmed a scene where Kid Jenny is out with her dad, and he's using some, like, fuck-off huge piece of farm machinery to harvest crops. The front part of the vehicle is like a Caligula-level rolling death machine. Her dad gets down off the vehicle for some reason, and little 7-year-old Jenny just pushes him into it, just killing him.
They should have kept that in there. That would have been awesome.
The producers are, like, on record, I think on the Blu-ray, saying they wanted to cut that scene because they didn't think the audience could ever forgive Jenny for killing her rapist country dad.
I forgive her.
I forgive her. I'm pro Jenny fucking massacring this guy.
Let's talk about the people that were almost Forrest Gump that would have made this movie awful.
I've heard of one. I've heard of,
What's the one you've heard of?
Chevy Chase.
Yep.
You can't keep getting away with it!
That would have been maybe the most awful.
Yeah. That would have fucking sucked.
Bill Murray. Arguably the funniest option, John Travolta. Travolta said he later regretted turning it down.
Has Travolta, he seems like the kind of guy who would fuck up and try to play like a mentally handicapped person poorly. Has he ever done that?
Yes, he was actually Radio in Cuba Gooding Jr.'s Radio.
I'm a dude playing a dude disguised as another
It's
dude.
another dude. Bill Paxton was Robert Zemeckis' first choice. I could actually maybe see that working.
I don't know, boss. Maybe.
Out of the 4 I just told you, man, I mean.
Yeah, it's not exactly a murderer's row of great picks, but also Tom Hanks is like permanently sealed in our minds as Forrest Gump.
Correct. The author wanted John Goodman.
St. Louis represent! Pick John Goodman for the Forrest Gump remake!
And Fat Boy represent because according to the author, Forrest Gump's supposed to be 300 pounds.
Sorry. First thing I thought about was him on a boat. I'm sorry.
Fat Boy Autumn, here we come, baby. You want to know who turned down the role of Bubba?
Cuba Gooding Jr.
Yeah, you know, David Alan Grier, a real actor.
Yaphet Kotto.
No.
Scatman Crothers.
Ice Cube.
No!
Cube apparently refused to play an idiot. And you want to hear the funniest fucking one possible? And remember, this movie came out in 1994. Dave goddamn Chappelle turned down the role of Bubba.
Oh my god! Dave
And you want to know
Chappelle-
why he did it? He thought the movie would bomb.
Okay, yeah, as we learned later in his career, Dave Chappelle doesn't always have the best instincts.
Yeah. That's the reason why Dave Chappelle's in You've Got Mail.
Oh well, he's rich anyway. He's rich, bitch. Jesus Christ. What is it? One of the producers, Wendy Finnerman, in the bonus features, said that the only media who tried to composite actors, like in historical footage before this, was commercials. But that's actually a lie. The guys at ILM referenced the 1983 Woody Allen movie Zelig as their inspiration for doing that whole, like, putting real actors into old footage kind of thing. Scott Wisdom pointed out to me that that's a classic producer move. Like, of course, the producer would be much more inclined to be like, yeah, we were the first. We were the first to fucking try it. What about it? Zelig is all, like, have you ever heard of Woody Allen's Zelig before?
No.
It's a weirdly intelligent companion piece to Forrest Gump. It's a movie about a guy who is like an ultra-conformist. Like, he changes his entire personality just depending on who is in the room with him. And the movie's climax is actually its subject, Zelig, becoming a Nazi in Nazi Germany as the logical conclusion of this weird chameleon character, like, behavior is. It's fucking nuts. I got a copy of it. I might watch it. But speaking of Wendy Finnerman, things she said on the bonus features, this is more palatable than anything I just said. She talks about how early on during the development in Forrest Gump, somebody came into her office and pitched a movie idea where this hotshot, yuppie's estranged father dies and then leaves him his fortune. But instead it goes to this mysterious
Fucking Rain Man?
autistic
They were
savant
pitched
brother
Rain
he's
Man?
never met. And Wendy was like, oh man, it might be a bad look if I'm producing 2 movies with main characters who have unique brains. So she passed on it, and that movie's name, Tanner, was Albert Einstein.
I'm sorry. I like to imagine that what she actually said was 2 movies about R words. That is 100% what she said, and she just cleaned it up when she told the story down the line.
I mean, we have her words. They're on the bonus features. I think she called them, like, limited people. I think that was the phrase she chose to use.
That feels more offensive than calling me the R word.
And that's the ruling, folks. Case closed.
It's crazy that Sally Field plays Tom Hanks' mother when she's only 10 years older than him.
I cannot look at her without thinking of Steel Magnolias and starting to cry. Even that scene where she fucks the principal. All I could think was Steel Magnolias. This is just like Steel Magnolias.
So, you want to know who turned down Jenny?
Yeah.
Jodie Foster.
Yeah.
Nicole Kidman.
That would have been. Yeah.
Demi Moore.
Okay.
Robin Wright is Jenny. Tom Hanks is Forrest. Robin Wright to me is Jenny.
For a second, I thought you were going to say Robin Wright turned it down, and I was like, she would have been a perfect Jenny. God damn it.
Oh, I also forgot one more actor that apparently auditioned to play Bubba.
Willem Dafoe.
Tupac Shakur.
Tupac Shakur.
Great rapper. Like his music.
You know what? I'm done with the crime life. I've had enough shootouts. I'm gonna go be in Forrest Gump. Robert Zemeckis' Forrest Gump.
You think Tupac's ever gonna make another album?
Kendrick Lamar will make the next Tupac album.
Some say he already has.
Do you know how Tom Hanks got the Forrest Gump accent?
Isn't it the kid? It's just how the kid talked?
Yep, he got it from Michael Connor Humphreys, the kid who plays young Forrest. Until that kid showed up on set, Tom Hanks was really confused about what type of accent to go with. Apparently, Tom Hanks would get the kid to talk more so he could, study his accent by talking to him about Jurassic Park, which was his favorite movie at the time. So yeah, he got the accent from a little Mississippi boy who's a teacher now. Good for you, Michael.
Michael Connor Humphreys was in a single episode of some random ass TV show starring Kevin Sorbo a couple years ago.
Oh, fuck.
The guy still acts?
He went on to he did a tour in Iraq. I think he did his 4 years in the military, and then he worked for the Department of Transportation, I think, and now he's a teacher. He was in a shitty movie called Pathfinders. It was a little indie film. I don't know if it's Christian propaganda or not, but he hasn't done much. I don't think he liked it when he was an actor. I think he came away from the experience and was like, this sucks. And the reason for that was, the scene where his fucking leg braces are exploding? Get this, the way they did that was they loaded up cat bombs into a model of the leg braces.
They actually had metal explode off his leg?
Cat bombs! And he had to run. They could have
ruined his legs!
They had to run with photosonic cameras fucking dollying by while these things exploded off his bare fucking legs. And one of the guys on the bonus features jokes, they're like, yeah, I think the reason he was smiling was because those things weren't on him anymore.
I just looked up that Pathfinders movie you just talked about.
Yeah.
And it's good when the director of the movie's only IMDb credit is directing, writing, and acting in that movie. Ooh. It's good then.
Ooh. Fuck. Robert Zemeckis claims he's never read the book Forrest Gump.
Well, good. It's not a good book. You know what? The only worse book than Forrest Gump?
What?
The sequel. Which I believe is called Forrest & Co.
Is that where Forrest Gump stops 9/11 because he's built different?
No. That book I'm pretty sure came out before 9/11. However, 9/11 I'm pretty sure is the reason why they never made Forrest Gump 2.
He was in the towers that day, and he's like, let me demonstrate my parachute. And he just jumps off, and he turns around, and just the two planes hit, and he's like, oh, God.
Yeah, the sequel would have had Forrest Gump meet OJ and Diana.
He was on the Challenger, but he had to get off at the last second because he forgot to tie his shoes.
Okay, no, hold on. I remember what happened. So there was a Forrest & Co. book, and the screenwriter, Eric Riles, turned in a draft for the sequel on September 10th, 2001. And then 9/11 happens the next day, and America fundamentally is not the same. I'm pretty sure the sequel script had nothing to do with the book. The book has batshit insane stuff like Forrest going to space. But to me, somehow the craziest thing is they discover that Forrest was never actually discharged from the army because of a clerical error. And instead of, fixing that clerical error, they send him to fight in the fucking Gulf War?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What?
Operation Ghost Recon starring Forrest fucking Gump. Cause yeah, they totally can't just be like, oops, sorry, all right, change the record now. No, they need to deploy his ass. Oh,
Yeah.
You know,
For the record, when I say that Forrest meets OJ in the sequel script, what I'm telling you is that in the script, Forrest was in the back of the Bronco.
I was going out with a football star. What is it? The production designer, he visited Watergate for Forrest Gump, this movie. He actually visited the real hotel on Virginia Avenue and asked the employees, he's like, hey, where did the break-in take place? And is there a room where, like, somebody could have seen it happening? And they were like, yeah, totally. So when you see Forrest, like, pointing out the dudes with the flashlights, that's architecturally correct. They went through the trouble.
That's awesome. And you know what the crazy thing? In honor of Forrest Gump's 30th anniversary coming up, the Supreme Court has retroactively made Watergate legal. I hope you didn't come to this podcast for escapism.
I hope Robert Zemeckis' next film can cheer us up as much as Forrest Gump did. Robert Zemeckis presents The Tree of Life.
I guess the camera thing's kind of an interesting gimmick. I don't think you can successfully de-age really famous actors because, like, you know what they looked like back then.
Yeah, Ethan pointed that out when I showed him the trailer, because Tom Hanks, his proportions don't get skinnier as he gets younger with the, like, deepfake method, whatever they're using. It's probably something more complicated than just a typical, like, neural net deepfake, but Tom Hanks, when he was younger, his face was real thin. And in this one, it just looks like young Tom Hanks' face is mapped onto a different guy. So
yeah, like, we know what these ultra famous people looked like. They didn't look like that.
Maybe it'll be good. Maybe it'll be good.
Zemeckis has me by the balls. The man made Back to the Future and Forrest Gump, two movies in my personal top 10. I'll give every movie he makes a chance.
At least he's not making those motion capture movies anymore, thank God.
Yeah, the last Welcome to Marwin, I think, was the last gasp of air of the motion capture era for Zemeckis. Now he makes a movie where Pinocchio stares at a giant pile of shit.
Man, I saw that clip so many times on YouTube the year that came out. Hey, this movie de-aged Dick Cavett for the scene with the Dick Cavett show. They just grabbed Dick Cavett and put makeup on him. Dick Cavett was still alive. They were just like, come here. We want as many real elements on this set as possible. You're gonna be next to John Lennon. Here, let's just put some makeup on him.
The funniest fucking thing is the John Lennon sequence. No religion?
It's so fucking
No
bad.
government too? I love this movie. I don't think I can defend that scene. It's fucking ridiculous.
Well, what they did was they had, like, production assistants before the movie kicked off, going around to, like, every archive library where historical footage was, just going through everything, and they would just make up the bits based on what they would find. This wasn't, like, planned out around famous bits of footage. They found a lot of this shit. And so, it's just ridiculous that they were like, all right, we've got this footage of John Lennon. We want him to say the lyrics to Imagine. Let's have him say, people in China don't have possessions and they're not religious. Go team. This is gonna win the Oscar for Best Picture. That scene sucks ass. No religion too? Ugh. I'm so happy though I got to send you the mega mime, like, no religion meme. That was good.
No religion? Yeah, it's just so... Forrest Gump could have been a disaster. Somehow it wasn't.
1994 was a good year. I think I'm biased, but, you know.
Forrest Gump 2 would have been a disaster if it got made. Did I tell you that they were going to have a plot where Forrest's son had AIDS?
What?
Yeah, they were going to do a whole thing about segregation busing.
Was that related to the AIDS?
The whole thing was that Forrest Jr. would have whatever disease Forrest Sr. or Robin Jenny had.
Okay, and then, like, Magic Johnson comes and visits the kid, shakes his
That's
hands.
the only thing that would have made that
bottle.
okay. That is the only thing that would have made that okay.
Listen,
The
kid,
funniest thing in the script, though, was that they had a whole thing where Forrest becomes a bingo caller on a Native American reservation. And it was in Oklahoma, and he becomes good friends with someone that teaches nursing. in a government building in Oklahoma City. Do you see where I'm going when I say government building in Oklahoma City?
Oh, gee, I hope nothing blows up. Oh, no.
Well, that's the thing. In this script that Eric Roth wrote, Forrest would have been waiting on a bench to have lunch with her, and then suddenly the building behind her blows up. And that was the thing. He rates that scene in the script. He submits the draft, and then 9/11 happens the next day, and he goes, maybe we shouldn't do this.
I do like the idea of a movie where Forrest Gump is just at the scene of like every national tragedy. Like every time something fucking horrible happens, like he's on a train heading to Palestine. I don't remember what state Palestine was in, but he's just like on his way there, and he's like, it sure does smell like chemicals around here.
I could just imagine for like the second Forrest is at both the Oklahoma City bombing thing and like the 9/11 happening. Immediately the FBI would be like, okay, hold on.
Forrest Gump? Jihad?
No, that reminds me. Did you know that Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, the Oklahoma City government building bomber, and the World Trade Center bomber from 1993 were all on the same cell block and became friends?
Oh, that owns. And
yeah, the World Trade Center bomber repeatedly tried to convert Ted Kaczynski to Islam.
Fuck yeah, Malcolm X. I would like it, like that prison block, but the person giving them MK Ultra LSD was Forrest Gump. He's just like, the government was paying me to give these convicts little sheets of paper to put on their tongues. Said it would make them nicer. You know, like Forrest Gump is accidentally drafted into the CIA, and he's like, it sounded nice. They called it Project Artichoke. The fucking MK Ultra movie starring Forrest Gump.
Oh my god, Forrest Gump is like still like. So how would Forrest Gump get Trump elected, you think?
he finds like what is it, Andy Dick's laptop. He kills Harambe on accident.
Yeah, or like he's somehow responsible for the Cubs winning the World Series.
Mm-hmm. At least he got all those people on the Lost Island to go free by doing that. That was one of his good blunders.
So how is Forrest Gump responsible for COVID?
He takes a business trip to Wuhan, China, and everyone keeps telling him to put on like a specific set of like hazmat clothes, and he just keeps sneezing and like taking off his helmet or some shit. I don't know. Like
it's not like they don't do the China lab leak thing because that'd be racist. But he's patient zero. Let's go with he's patient zero.
But don't we have like a New York Times story that it did come from an actual lab in China?
Yeah, it might have been. I don't think it was intentionally engineered though. Yeah, I think it's sort of the kind of thing. It was sort of a China was severely fucked up by COVID. I doubt they did that on purpose.
Oh, yeah. It was like a leak that was accidentally happened. Definitely. But yeah. Forrest Gump did it.
Forrest Gump did it.
Forrest Gump made COVID happen.
And Forrest Gump is the reason that Biden looked so senile on that debate stage. Forrest Gump gave him the wrong notes.
They were like, please don't get these pill bottles mixed up. This one's Adderall, this one's Quaaludes. Please don't fuck this up for us.
And he gave Joe Quaaludes.
And now we're all gonna starve.
What's the funniest historic event you could put Forrest Gump in? And extra difficulty, you can't pick 9/11.
I like that sentence a lot. Yeah, that's kind of hard for me.
I think it'd be funny if he was somehow responsible for the Bush administration thinking there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. I think that'd be kind of good if like it was a misunderstanding from him somehow.
Yeah, he accidentally made the Cuban Missile Crisis happen. He did.
So he sent him back in time.
A prank phone call. Yeah. I guess it's got to be from a realistic time where he wouldn't have been a child.
Well, he met Kennedy when he was in college.
That's fair. So maybe he was old enough to make a prank phone call and almost get the world exploded. Maybe. Just Oppenheimer, but Forrest Gump's a character. Now we got him time traveling. Forrest Gump at the Trinity test.
Forrest Gump, Chicago, Illinois, 2002. He gets into a conversation with this black gentleman, and then he says 3 words to this black gentleman: "Yes, we can." And that's how Barack Obama gets his campaign slogan. That is the funniest thing we can put him in.
Finally. Tanner, you did it. You fucking did it.
We did it. Because you know what? That would totally be in a Forrest Gump sequel now. Him giving Obama his campaign slogan. Yeah. Also, a Forrest Gump sequel now would have rancid vibes. It would be a deeply evil movie. Forrest Gump could only have been made in the mid-90s.
Yeah, this movie needed to be made when things were nice and optimistic and not...
when we thought we were at the end of history.
Howard Zinn was a mistake. Tanner, want to move on to final thoughts about this great
Yeah, let's get on with it. Austin, you go ahead.
Forrest Gump is supposed to be a fairy tale about America, viewed through the unique lens of a kind-hearted, simple man, except the details that it omits in order to stay simple were actually kind of important. And people mistake its kind of surface-level lessons for high wisdom, mostly because the lessons are laconic and they're familiar to the status quo. It's the AC/DC of classic films. But I'd be a son of a bitch if I didn't admit this is really well-made propaganda. And besides, even if the America from this film is not real, Bubba Gump Shrimp Company sure fucking is. Bubba Gump Shrimp! Try our Run Across America sampler now for $29.69. Hallelujah! Back to you, Tanner.
I've never been to the Bubba Gump restaurant. Is it any good?
Yeah, it's good. It's fine.
I wonder where the nearest one is.
Like Florida, I think.
What?
Yeah, it's a real place.
Closer than that.
Yeah, it's a real place.
All right. Well, Forrest Gump is a masterpiece. I think it is an essential fairy tale of Americana. I love it so much. It is a damn near perfect film for me. Well, it is a perfect film for me. I think it is a beautiful tale of 2 halves of quintessential America, where that intersection is in a fairy tale in the middle. And that's it for this episode of Bomb Squad Matinee. Thank you very much for watching. If you're listening on any of the audio platforms we're on, go ahead and leave a review. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you also very much for watching. How about you mosey on over to our Patreon, throw a couple bucks our way. Speaking of Patreon, shout out to Jason Secord. That's right. Thank you very much. He is part of our big $10 Patreon tier where you get a shout out. Jason Secord's a cool guy. He does some cool writing. Check it out. And yeah, this is if you're on YouTube as well, go ahead and leave a comment below. What do you think of Forrest Gump? What's your favorite American movie? And what is the single funniest historical event you can put Forrest Gump in? Comment below and let me know. And while you're down there, hit the like button so we know how much you like us. Hit the subscribe button so you know how much you love us. And hit the bell icon so you know exactly when we upload new videos. Thank you again so much very much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye! So it looks like the closest Bubba Gump Shrimping Company is either in Tennessee or Minnesota.
I slid my ticket across the table and I said, "Sorry guys,